Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I believe it's actually been quite a while since I've actually drawn anything in my sketchbook. I was kind of looking back at what was the last thing I even drew in here, and it was whenever I was sketching the clay hippers video. If you haven't seen that, I'll put it on the screen if you're interested. But I think it's been about, let's say, over 2 weeks since I've sketched in my sketchbook, because I don't know if it's because I was busy with like some other prep and doing mostly digital art at the time, and then fighting for my life with like a little bit of not an art block per se, because I was still able to draw. I was just not really satisfied with anything I was drawing, so I ended up doing a lot more sketching digitally and then scrapping it, so I didn't really return back to my sketchbook all that much. But let me quickly talk about what we're going to be doing today. So because I was trying to get back into the swing of things a little bit, I was trying to figure out what medium I actually haven't used in like recent times in my sketchbook, and one of them was actually colored pencils or pencil crayons. I am going to be referring to them as pencil crayons because I am Canadian, so if you're a little bit confused, pencil crayons and colored pencils are the same thing, so hopefully that clears things up a little bit. So today I am going to be drawing Kaelix from Niji-san-Gen, because I've been having a wonderful time just like watching the new waves like live streams as of recently, alongside with like listening to their covers and music, and just getting back into watching streams just in general, because I've been catching up on some of the streams that like of my Oshis and stuff from both like Niji and a little bit from Hollow, I believe. So I think today's session is going to be probably me just talking a lot about maybe Vtuber-ish stuff, but I will talk about the art a little bit more first and kind of like my weird art funk that I was in. So let's start off with that. I went back and looked at like what was my most recent video with my sketchbook, because last week I did end up doing the paint marker type of video. It wasn't like in my sketchbook, and typically the reason why I like posting either traditional videos or like specifically sketchbook videos for Monday as like my schedule is to kind of like push myself to keep up with some sort of like sketching habit. Now I talked about this probably in a previous video that I was gonna stop myself from enforcing a daily sketchbook habit and just kind of like have a better relationship just wanting to sketch in my sketchbook whenever I have the opportunity to, or like when I feel the need to. But obviously like things are gonna come up, you're gonna get busy, or like similar to me, I focused on more or less like trying to finish things that were for products or like merch, and they were more like digital files that needed to be finished rather than like sketching things out traditionally, which I usually do. If I ever have like ideas that I want to just like barf on a page, I will definitely sketch it out first instead of doing it digitally, because it feels a little bit more natural. But I guess for the last 2 weeks, I didn't really do any of that other than planning for like the clay hippers, which I think if I checked my file, March 10th was when I when I finished editing the video. So I definitely sketched and did the clay hippers before then, which means it's probably around the 2-week-ish mark that I haven't sketched in my sketchbook. So even though I like having a schedule to push myself to continually work in this particular sketchbook, it's not like a super big necessity. Also, for this drawing, when I started doing the coloring process, I noticed that I had the 2 little clay hipper sketches that were on post-it notes that were kind of hindering the coloring process, because they were creating like a little crease or a line whenever I was like bumping into the back of the sticky note. So I decided to take those off. But because I was kind of like in the mood of looking back at what I was sketching in my sketchbook, I found out that I didn't really use colored pencils in a while. I typically use colored pencils for like the ASMR session, which I like to use a more textured paper, like the recycled paper from the Strathmore recycled paper pad that's like a 9x12, and I typically draw larger and I draw on the toned paper. Sometimes I draw on like the white paper that has like a little bit more tooth to it, so I do layer up the colored pencils a little bit different. But for today's session, because we're working on this very smooth notebook paper, if you're not familiar with like the sketchbooks that I typically use, that are the ones that I've designed, they are technically notebooks and not like a full-blown sketchbook, I guess. It doesn't have like proper drawing paper or like mixed media paper by any means. It's definitely a very thin, smooth, textured paper, and it is like slightly off-white. But for myself, I like using typically sketchbooks that have like a very smooth surface, but I prefer thicker paper if I can. Thinner paper is actually nice sometimes because it's just like a lot more pages rather than having a finite amount where it feels like the amount of paper with like the thicker type, it feels like a lot less in the sketchbook, and I feel like it's a little bit more precious compared to having so much thinner paper where I can kind of like scribble, and if I don't like it, I'll just move on because there's plenty of more paper in the sketchbook. But it's like a personal preference. It's kind of like a back and forth. Sometimes a little bit more precious with whatever I draw, and sometimes I don't care and I just kind of sketch willy-nilly and just pray and hope for the best. But talking a little bit about the colored pencils, I've been referring to them as colored pencils for some reason. It does feel a little bit weird for some reason I'm saying it like that, but yeah. For the coloring process, I ended up still layering the same way as I do whenever I do the ASMR sessions on the textured paper. The difference is the amount of buildup is going to be slightly different. So on textured paper, because there's so much like texture and bumps, it takes a little bit more of like light layering to cover up the little white spaces on the paper. So because of that, I feel like I have a lot more room to layer up in very subtle ways where I don't feel like I have to press as hard to create a more smooth surface, or just like being able to build up a lot more colors before we get to like that waxiness or like the slipperiness that you get sometimes from using pencil crayons in general. So when I was working on the smoother surface, because there's not really anything for the pencil crayons to really grip onto, I feel like it's just a little bit less time to actually layer up. So I'm covering the surface much quicker, and oftentimes when I'm layering up, I do like one flat pass of my light color to treat it as a base, and then as we layer up, we get darker and darker, and oftentimes I'm pushing the saturation. But because there is less space that's being covered, there is more space being covered by the pencil crayons, like in general, the paper surface is getting covered so quickly that I feel like I'm layering on top of my pencil crayons instead of layering up on the paper. So we do kind of hit that barrier where the layering does become a little bit harder because it does get waxier, if that makes sense. And because of that, I end up pressing a lot harder, a lot sooner compared to when I work on the textured paper. Now, I feel like the brand of colored pencils also kind of like varies this kind of problem. So when I use with like Prismacolor Premiers, I do feel like the layering capabilities is just a little bit more compared to the Arrtx ones, but I do like the Arrtx colored pencils just because they are they're cheaper for sure. The color payoff is actually really nice, but the layering capability I think is like in between the Scholars and the Premier. Premier feels a little bit more creamier, and you can layer up just a smidge more with a little bit easier time blending if you want to like really burnish. But with the Arrtx ones, I did feel like there was a lot more gliding on the notebook paper than I felt when I was working on the textured paper for like the reason I mentioned earlier. But it's still like a fun time using them, and they're kind of like my go-to whenever I use colored pencils. As of recently, the container is just like really easy for me to carry around if I need to. There's like a plethora of colors because I have the 72 colored set. So as I'm working on Kaelix, you can kind of see like I'm trying my best to put as many colors as I can. I definitely like playing around with colors when it comes to just coloring in general for traditional mediums especially. So there's like a bit of purple, there's a little bit of yellow, a cream color in his hair, but I tried to make sure that the purple and the blue is kind of like the main shadow color because his hair color is more on like the white side. So we're pushing towards kind of gray for the shadows. And then for his darker portions of his clothing, I did try my best to layer up a purple, a brown, and a blue together. I forgot to grab like more of a dark teal color so that we can offset the reddish purple tones that we have in his kind of like colored turtleneck, I guess. But overall, still had a wonderful time just drawing him, and I ended up pairing him with sunflowers. So I was watching, I think it's his 2.0, and he mentioned that there's like 3 flowers that he really liked, and one of them was sunflowers. So hopefully when I get around to it, I would like to draw all 4 of the By the Beat boys and do like flower portraits or something of that sort for all 4 of them, because I like all of their designs quite a bit and they're just very fun to watch in my opinion. For myself, I think like a motivation that I have for wanting to push myself to do I don't know, particular types of drawings or wanting to finish art for it and stuff sometimes is run by or like fueled by my love for like a particular fandom. I am that type of person ever since I was into like any kind of like anime shows, K-pop, I guess in this case like Idol or VTubers in this case, just things that I enjoy watching and consuming in that kind of way. So when By the Beat came back, I kind of had like a kickstart again back with like wanting to draw more and hopefully experimenting a little bit more as well. So hopefully that kind of like takes me out of the art funk. But I do think like the biggest kicker for me for like the art funk that I've been kind of experiencing for the last 2 weeks was mostly because I had deadlines. So there was a lot of things that was not drawing for myself, if that makes sense. And typically it was stuff that had like a very fast turnaround, so I didn't get to spend like a good amount of time to let things simmer a little bit when I was drawing. Things had to be turned out like a lot quicker. Even like right now, I have a birthday gift thing that I've been working on for a friend, and her birthday was like in kind of like the middle of March, I believe, like around the 15th, 16th, and it's already been almost, I think, a week after her birthday, and I still haven't given her her gift yet because I don't know if she watched this. I keep chancing it, but I've been trying to draw all of her OCs as like little photo cards for her birthday, and I'm trying to take my time on them because 1, they're very fun to draw. 2, I don't want to burn myself out and like get back into that weird art funk where I'm just churning out drawings instead of drawing the things that make me happy or like enjoying the process, if that makes sense. So I guess like that's like one of the good things about using colored pencils, which sometimes deters me from using it, and I feel like that's like very similar to other mediums that are more around like traditional art, is that they take a lot more time. Digital art, it kind of varies like from being super quick and super slow, but when it comes to doing like full color traditionally, it does take me a lot more time. So if I have to sit down to record a video, or if I want to do like a quicker session for whatever reason in my sketchbook, some mediums like the colored pencils, sometimes watercolor, gouache, what else is there? Even just like full render with alcohol markers, sometimes I'm a little bit deterred because it is such a long process, and sometimes if I spend all that time just to hate the end result, I kind of feel like I wasted those few hours, which is a bad feeling to have. And I don't think like ever spending too much time on an artwork is going to be like something that should be bad, if that makes sense. It should be valued regardless because you went through the art process. Like you shouldn't just value the end result unless it's like, I guess like a commission or something where the end result varies, or not varies, is very important to like a client or something like that. But for the most part, I hope you guys also enjoy like your art process when you're doing your art, and hopefully that's enjoyable so that it's not like feels like a chore or anything like that. So yeah. So hopping back in to talk a little bit more about the art, because I was drawing the sunflowers, I've drawn sunflowers quite a bit in the past, but I don't think I looked up a proper reference for these. I kind of drew them the way that I typically draw them, and I've done them both with watercolors. I think I've done gouache, I've done alcohol markers, and I've done colored pencils and just like normal graphite. And for some reason in the center of the, like I was gonna call it a cauliflower. sunflower. I always do a similar like circular pattern for them, so apologies if they don't look very realistic in that sense. I think the petals are a little bit too small as well, or like not as dense, which I would have liked, but I'll definitely do like a digital version of something like this where I can draw calyx with the sunflowers. I might have to go back to a few of their other 2.0s and figure out whether or not they've mentioned flowers or anything. Otherwise, I can do the fun thing, which is like researching and looking up like visual references, or if I want to go more towards like the meaning towards the flowers for each of them, that might suit them a little bit better. We'll see. But I think other than that, since we have a few more minutes before the end of the video and you guys can just watch me basically render out this last flower, and I will squeeze in one last doodle on the very side to kind of complete the spread, or like, yeah, complete the spread basically. Talking about VTubers, I guess, I have finally found the time to kind of like catch up on streams. I think I've talked about my Ushis before in previous videos and on stream before, so out of Niji, Sanji, En, my Ushis are technically Reimu, Ike, and Albin, and I'm still kind of like feeling out by the beat because I feel like I am going to watch them quite a bit, so we'll see if one of them also joins the rest of the Niji, En Ushis that I have on this side. As for like JP or just like general Niji, Sanji, I do like watching Sefina a lot. She just does like very cozy streams. She also draws, and like, you know, I like watching her play Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing. What else is there? Yeah, her drawing streams are fun, and like as well as like singing and all that. She's very talented. And then my top number one out of like the JP side is Kaida Haru. I've talked about him quite a bit, and he's just very cute overall, and he also has more of like that comfy kind of demeanor ish. So yeah, he's definitely my favorite to watch as well. And then I also watch a little bit of like Hololive more so than Holo Stars. I haven't gotten kind of like into Holo Stars as much, but the funny thing is like when I first got into like VTubers in general, and I think I have a video talking a little bit more about this when I did I think drawing 6-character fan art, and I did all VTubers. I drew Ina, so she's from Hololive, and I watch Mume a lot as well from the girls. And then for the guys, I only watched, I think, Gamma, and then Oga from Holostars JP. So as of like the EN side, I think I've only watched a handful of some of their streams, so I can't really say like I have like a top favorite, I don't think. I think I've watched Shinri at the very beginning because he had a very cozy demeanor for the most part, as well as Regis? Then I kind of watched like a few indies here and there for like, I was gonna say very obvious reasons, but there is, I don't know, it just feels more natural. So I watch a lot of Mint, I watch Doki occasionally, and then like Nimi and Doobie as well. So I don't know, it's just nice to have like a kind of like an option of streams to have in the background, because I do really like long form media. So whenever I'm doing like drawing sessions and stuff, that's like my go-to. Also, by the way, I'm just using the High-Tech C Coletto pencil alongside with the color blue lead from the Uni Nano, whatever that word vomit is for this brand of lead, for the little doodle on the side, because I just wanted to scribble something that could fill up a little bit of that space that we have for the spread. I'm just gonna write the date down too, because I've been very diligent with writing the dates for the most part for a good chunk of the sketchbook, but for some reason I just suddenly stopped. So yeah, I'm gonna continue doing that so I can figure out where are my gaps. Oh, right, I forgot that because of this Kuro sticker, he's kind of like a little defect, so I stuck him in my sketchbook. He caused like a really big indent, and I didn't really notice it until I started really coloring in Kaelix. And yeah, the kind of like outline that's like on Kaelix is very apparent, which is unfortunate, but it's okay. The colors cover it up a little bit, so yeah, I think that's it for today's little sketchbook session. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful start to the week, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!